Previously on the Demonic Compendium, John talked about Orthrus, and even though he totally wrote it down to talk about it, he was a big dum-dum who neglected to talk about the fact that Orthrus was one of the forms taken by the demon Hido Kononushi during his boss fight in Devil Summoner Raida Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army. And while I'm making corrections, I'm still kicking myself for forgetting that Mokoi is one of the personas used by Margaret in Persona 3 Portable. That was not a great omission for a pilot episode, and I'm sorry about that. And now, onto our regularly scheduled program. Welcome to an ooey gooey, icky sticky new episode of the Demonic Compendium, the show where I discuss the mythology, design, and game history of your favorite Megami Tensei demons. Like last year's Ghoul, I wanted to discuss another demon befitting the season of Halloween, so brace yourselves for a chill down your spine, because today, we're talking about Blob. Unlike most demons I discuss on the show, blobs don't originate from some mythological tale dating back hundreds or even thousands of years. The Blob originated right here in the United States of America in the 1958 sci-fi horror classic, The Blob. Directed by Irvin Yeaworth and starring Steve McQueen in his first cinematic role, The Blob became a hit of the 1950s drive-in. The story goes that the movie was originally going to be called The Glob, but after discovering that cartoonist Walt Kelly had released a book of the same name, they changed it to The Blob. The titular monster is a jelly-like creature that lands on Earth in a meteor where it begins to devour people. Every human the Blob eats causes it to get larger and more blood red in color. The heroes eventually discover the Blob has an aversion to cold, so they freeze it and ship it off to the Arctic.
I don't think it can be killed, but at least we've got it stopped.
Yeah, as long as the Arctic stays cold.
The Blob worked just fine as a drive-in popcorn flick, but a more interesting aspect of it lies underneath all those gelatinous folds of slime. The Blob itself was actually an allegorical reference to communism. Think about it. It's a movie about a foreign red monster that seems to be constantly growing, and it can only be stopped by the cold.
Believe it or don't.
To many, The Blob and its titular monster are staples of sci-fi horror cinema. It was a box office hit, spawned a sequel, a remake, and supposedly another remake is in the works right now. Whoever could have anticipated that an allegorical movie about a red ball of goop that ate people would eventually spark the creation of a well-known Megami Tensei demon? Blob's compendium entry from Nocturne states that it is an infamous jelly-like monster. It swallows humans and grows. It is said that the only way to stop blobs is to freeze them. This description is nearly identical to the creature from the film. Design-wise, Blob has rarely been anything special, as nearly every major iteration of Blob are simply red-based palette swaps of slime. I mean, this is the first time in the history of the Demonic Compendium I don't have artwork to put in the thumbnail, since as far as I can tell, no artwork of Blob actually exists. Which is odd, since both Slime and Black Ooze have artwork. In its most well-known design, Blob is simply an amorphous, well, blob, with eyes and a face. But it's red. That's how you know it's a blob and not a slime or a black ooze. Devil Summoner Raida Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon introduced the 3D model of Slime's alternate design that originated in the first Devil Summoner, where rather than being its own mass, the creature utilizes a human skeleton to form a body with which to move around. Once again, blobs appeared as a palette swap of this design with a more reddish color scheme. Blob appears in Revelations the Demon Slayer, aka Last Bible, as a low-level demon with a design reminiscent of a completely different 1950s sci-fi horror classic, as Blob in The Demon Slayer resembles the monster from the Trollenberg Terror, or the Crawling Eye as most of us in the States may know it. Blobs also appear as enemy mirages in Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE, being not only a specific enemy type, but the basis for the Blob category of enemies. In the art book that came with the special edition of the game, Atlas art director Fumitaka Yano writes about Blob, "We based this on the strange visual cross between a magician's hat and a slime mold. The bizarreness really comes across in its jaunty, comical movement and the viscous dripping trail behind it. Aside from the magician's hat, we can also see old-timey cartoonish gloves and shoes adorning the Blob's limbs in this iteration." In Devil Summoner 2, Raida Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon, Blob is one of the demons that can only be obtained during a special fusion accident, where players simply don't give Victor any of the materials he asks for. As a skill class demon, Blob now has the ability to transform Raida into the appearance of another. Blobs appear early in the game in Digital Devil Saga, where they will attempt to leech MP from Surf's party in order to cast Pterodyne, which is a much higher level spell than most enemies at the time are able to cast. But don't worry, because they'll usually fail. Speaking of Digital Devil Saga, Blob's biggest role in the entire franchise comes from Digital Devil Saga 2, where Surf will find the rotting carcass of a blob in a jail cell and send it through a meat processing machine, where he will trick the jailer into eating it, causing him to get horrible nightmarish diarrhea, so the embryon can kill him in this embarrassing weakened state. Yes, really. Play it for yourself if you don't believe me.
Believe it or don't.
And of course, true to its origins in film as well as its various compendium entries, blobs in Megami Tensei are traditionally weak to ice attacks. The last major role of Blob in the franchise comes from Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE, where in Toma Akagi's first side story, Thrust to the Future, Toma seeks some hands-on training in the Idolosphere to practice his action moves. This can be accomplished by killing 5 blobs in the Daitama Idolosphere. An odd side note is that Blob in Tokyo Mirage Sessions is not weak to ice. In fact, it resists it and is instead weak to fire, possibly for simple gameplay reasons of allowing Toma to easily take them down for the quest. Blob stands out mostly for its origins as a drive-in movie monster rather than so many other classic demons that stem from deep mythological backgrounds, but has managed to leave a few nice impressions in the games as well. And so there you have it, Blob! It leaps and creeps and glides and slides across the floor right through the door. Did I leave out something you thought was important? Was I just plain wrong about something? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know who you'd like to see me talk about in future episodes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Demonic Compendium, and I'll see you next time. But be careful while you rest that a demon doesn't take over your body.